Hey all, Carpetbagger here, coming to you live from the north, more specifically Chicago, Illinois. And before I even get started here, I want to make a warning. Some of this content will be very graphic and disturbing to some, so maybe the little ones can skip this particular video. Now, I am at the corner of Wallace and 63 in Chicago, Illinois. I am in front of the Englewood post office and across from the Aldi grocery store, and I am standing on one of the most evil spots in American history. This ground that I am standing on currently was the location of the notorious H.H. Holmes murder castle. During the 1893 World's Fair, there was a man that went by the name of H.H. Holmes. That was not his real name. His real name was Herman Mudgett. He was a flim-flam artist, a con man, and he went across the country scamming people and went by the alias of H.H. Holmes. And then during the World's Fair, he wound up here in Chicago. And despite being a drifter, despite being someone with not a lot of money, he was able to con his way into building a massive hotel through various means of fraud. He would actually hire contractors to build parts of the hotel and then never pay them. So he would hire more people, bring them in, they would do some work until he stopped paying them, and then they would leave. And that was not the only reason. Not the only reason that he was bringing in different contractors, because he didn't want anyone to know what he was building except for himself. And what he was building was a murder castle. H.H. Holmes is the closest thing to a real life supervillain that we will ever experience. So what was the murder castle? It was floors and rooms. It was a maze. There was doors that opened to brick walls, mazes to get lost in, and most horrifying, the rooms were actually geared for pure murder. There would be rooms where they would be airtight so that the guests would suffocate. There would be rooms where gas would be pumped into the room to kill the guests. There would be rooms where a blowtorch would be activated to cook the guests alive. And what was the purpose of this? This was a castle designed specifically to murder people. And he got away with it because of the World's Fair. People were coming from out of town, staying at the hotel. And back then, you know, when someone left town, you know, you didn't have a cell phone, you didn't even have a phone. You just had to count on them writing you letters, letting you know they were okay, and eventually, hopefully, showing back up. So, especially a lot of young girls would stay at H.H. Holmes's hotel and never return home, and their families would just assume they ran off. They wouldn't even know that they were missing necessarily. And one of the most disturbing aspects of this murder castle, there was, under the rooms, they actually were built slides and tunnels so that they could take the dead bodies and put them directly down into the basement of the murder mansion. And in the basement, H.H. Holmes, along with his ghoulish assistant, Peisel, would take the bodies, melt them with acid, cut them apart, and then take the skeletons and sell them to medical universities and schools of medicine, because back then it was illegal to sell human body parts. So they made all their money selling these skeletons. And you've got to think, these skeletons that were sold to medical doctors, to hospitals, I mean, there's nothing keeping track of them. There's probably still H.H. Holmes victims that are on display in medical museums or in doctors' offices. Just think, next time you see a skeleton in a medical facility, it could have come from H.H. Holmes. Now, he would get caught and prosecuted for murder, but it turns out it wasn't because of killing all these people coming in to see the World's Fair. He would actually almost get a little too cocky and try to kill Peisel. his loyal assistant. The two of them had cooked up a scheme. They were gonna fake Peisel's death. Peisel was gonna fake his death, and Holmes was gonna find a corpse that looked like Peisel, disfigure it, you know, make it mess up enough where he couldn't tell it wasn't him, and then collect on life insurance. The thing is, Holmes got lazy. He didn't want to spend a lot of time looking for a corpse, so he just killed Peisel and claimed his life insurance, and that was his downfall. And actually, apparently, he murdered Peisel's entire family too, and so he would eventually be convicted and executed, and the murder castle would be burned to the ground. I'm not sure exactly the cause of the fire, but I think there's some suspicion. People probably just didn't want the murder castle. You know, a lot of bad vibes. A lot of bad vibes just standing here where the murder castle was. Did I think that these horrendous events took place right here in this, near this underpass, by this Aldi? It's really, really something. And there's nothing left of the murder castle, except apparently at one point they were doing maintenance work on this post office, and they did find some tunnels underneath that could possibly be part of the murder castle. Oh yeah, and H.H. Holmes, a lot of people theorize, may have taken a little trip to London, and he was Jack the Ripper on the side. So this is H.H. Holmes, the closest thing America has ever had to the Joker or to Jigsaw. It's this pure, absolute evil in this evil, rotten spot right here in the great city of Chicago. Appreciate you guys watching. If you'd like to see other places I've been, check down in the link in the description. An interactive map that'll show you all the different places I've been. If you'd like to support the channel, I sell t-shirts, and I have a Patreon where I send out postcards with a donation of $3 or more. But for now, this one's in the bag.